Good morning. I want to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and Media Center of Ukraine Ukroboronprom starts its operation. It's year 9 of the war, and today is day 251 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggression in our land. And I want to thank all the representatives of the mass media who tell the world the truth about this war. Today, our team prepared the following events for you. At 12:30, we will have Yuri Ignat, spokesperson of the Air Force Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. We'll talk about the situation in Ukrainian skies. At 1300, we will have Andrei Nebetov joining us, the head of Kyiv Regional Police. We'll talk about the consequences of the enemy strikes on the critical infrastructure on the capital. We'll talk about the work of the criminologists in the occupied territories and the results of exhumation. At 1400, we will have the presentation of the new song by Mad Heads, and the leader of the band, Vadim Krasnooki, will join us in person. Now I want to introduce our speaker, Oleg Bondarev, more known to the Ukrainian society as Martin Brest, known to everybody as the author of the series about the infantry books, and not only those books. Now Mr. Oleg is the project manager for Ukroboronprom. Mr. Oleg, hello. Let's start our conversation about manufacture and repair of military material during the war. This is a very important area for us. Please. Good morning. Thank you for invitation. My name is Oleg Boldarev. I work with Ukroboronprom. I work since December 2021. I came there before the full-scale invasion, and now I'm ready to tell you about what I'm doing and what Ukroboronprom does within the limits that we can disclose this information. With regard to the repair of material, historically, it turned out that us as Ukroboronprom, as the managing company that exercises control over about 100 different enterprises, we manufacture, repair, and modernize a list of material used in the resistance forces in Ukraine. With the start of the full-scale invasion, we, like all of other people, were at home. First 3 days, our enterprises who had certain reserve of materials and equipment or ammunition, we were issuing all the equipment and ammunitions to the resistance forces, security service, border guard, all the enforcement agencies, those who were closer to us. We didn't know how the situation would have unfolded, and it would be quite stupid if the equipment and material would just perish in our facilities or would be left for the enemy. As it was proved by the first 2 months of operations, our logic was correct, and maybe later, after the war, I will tell you how the employees of one of the enterprises, they were able to hide a helicopter in one of the facilities, and when they spent 2 months hiding there, and when the occupants were pushed away from there, they called us and they asked us if we pick up the helicopter, which now is in service with the Ukrainian armed forces. I think that a lot of people in this war will be, don't remember how to say it in Ukrainian, undeservedly forgotten. The materials started going out of operation from the very first days of war. If our enterprises in volumes that we started working starting from 28th of February would not have started to repair the material, the front line would have been much closer to us than it is now. It's alpha and omega, and you cannot argue with this fact. So I think that the fact that the employees of the Ukroboronprom enterprises were awarded with the state awards some of them posthumously, is a small recognition of the merits of our employees, that they do everything necessary, that the armed forces are provided in all possible segments. It's not one of the challenges. We get a lot of equipment from our partners. I apologize for proceeding to this subject, but I think that the next question is connected to this, on how we repair the Western material. I would like to say that we provide the full complex, but it's not so. In order to sort things out, you need to spend 1 minute and understand how the Western equipment generally gets in the hands of the Ukrainian armed forces. It doesn't get there just because somebody brought it by the airplane and just said take it. First, the crews are being trained to operate and maintain the equipment. When you buy a car, for example, you don't get a full set of spare parts in your trunk. For example, if you get a HIMARS, it has rockets with it, and it doesn't have a spare batteries, for example. So the transfer of material doesn't mean the transfer of full set of spare parts, and we have to buy it. To procure them, both Ukroboronprom and the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine have the necessary personnel, necessary experts. They specialize in special experts, but now they switch to special imports. Their task is to look for and to repair the necessary parts. So the repair of the material coming to us from the West and from the sources who is the best Lend-Lease source for the time being, which is Russian Federation. In fact, the repair is being done in 2 stages. First stage in the armed forces of Ukraine with the repair units, within regiments, within brigades, who consider the opportunity for repair if they're overloaded with work, if they don't have opportunities to leave the tank tower, for example. But there are mobile brigades too. Within the first months of war, any material was towed to just to the closest places. If there is a repair factory in Zhytomyr, it was pulled there. If it's closer to a military repair unit, the material was moved there. Now we switch to specializations. So, say, conditional Saxon is being manufactured by a special enterprise which manufactures spare parts for it. And there is a good thing which helps the material to operate. It's called the wheels, and the wheels and this factory puts on the wheels the material being repossessed or re-repossessed by the Ukrainian armed forces, which was first captured by the Russians, and then it was captured back by us. So we just covered these Z signs, and now we use it in our armed forces. These manufacturing facilities, thanks to the war, I don't know if it's possible to say thanks to the war, so we learned the word dissemination of manufacture, dissemination of repair facilities, and we learned the word relocation. And believe me, it's very lengthy, it's very difficult from engineering and technical standpoint, but relocation helps to bring people away from under attack. So maybe the same as 8 months ago, people are main repair resource. So the task is to have people go to work and operate on any type of material. Mr. Oleg, one of the strategies of Russians in these wars is the use of unmanned aerial vehicles. We've seen all these Iranian drones, loitering drones, which inflicts a substantial damage on us, but our Air Force counters it, fights it effectively. On the other hand, we've heard statements that there are activities related to manufacture of Ukrainian drones. Can you tell us about the situation in this field? Well, this subject of Ukrainian drones emerged when we had the first strike by Shahed. In order to normally answer this question, I have to mention specifically the Iranian drones, the Shaheds. There are several myths related to this weapon. The first one, Iranian Shahed is made of crap and stones. That's not true, because it was built within it was developed within 6 years. The second myth is it's a cheap weapon. It's not cheap at all. It's a very costly weapon, not as costly as a cruise missile, but still. And the third myth, it's very simple. Well, like anybody can make a drone which flies 600 kilometers and hits a thermal power station. In case it would have been so, Russia would have been constructing them on its own without buying it from Iran or any other country. Because you understand, unmanned aerial vehicle is a set of parts which are being procured from different companies. Iran, who builds these drones, they don't manufacture chips for them. They don't manufacture propellant parts for them. So it's the part which has a little opaque nature. It looks simple from outside, just add some grenades and boom. It's not so. The use of Shaheds against our country has a definitive nature in terms of application, in terms of damage on our country. Part of them flies to identify the location of our anti-aircraft units. Another part goes by different roads, and yet another part goes to inflict certain damage. They fly to identify the location of the Western anti-aircraft weapons. It's not just a flying thing launched from anywhere and which may explode elsewhere. It's a full complex which is being currently applied for the first time in the world history in the scale that it is used and for the damage of the goals, of the targets that they are used on. And we create the tactics of countermeasures to such type of weapon. And all the people, all the normal people should be interested not in the tactics of their use. Our guys shut them down, but there are two questions. Why now? Why in September and October they started hitting our thermal power plants? And the second question is, what can we do to get there, to reach them? I'm hoping, I've been heard that the UAVs is a complex and complicated thing. You have to spend years, you have to spend money. We don't have years. That's the bad news. And another bad news is we don't have a lot of money. But the third piece of news that everybody knows, but I have to reiterate it, we'll lose to Russia in everything, in terms of scale of our army, in scale of our material. But we have one thing, is intellect. Russia never buys technologies. It's just a pile of paper. You either buy it or you steal it and you make it in your manufacturing facilities. They cannot do it. Even if they are brought the Shahid on a plate, they wouldn't they wouldn't be able to manufacture it. They buy, like in case of Orlan, they buy the whole manufacturing facility. Our intellect is our only advantage. And in that regard, I want to say that currently, during the war in our country, only in our country we had 70 new developments for UAVs. Our manufacturing facilities and research facilities are currently developing a heavy material with a payload of 1,200 kilograms. It may fly without counteraction from anti-aircraft weapons. And the developments are being done by both government-controlled sector and private sector. And some of the facilities do it on a, so to say, semi-legal basis. Do you know how many research and development activities were done in Russia within this period, developed from zero? It's zero. It's good for us. It's a bad thing for them, but currently I'm more than convinced that now we have to spend a lot of money, of state money, to develop specifically Ukrainian UAV systems, whether we're talking about the private sector, which has its advantages but doesn't have sometimes doesn't have a necessary amount of manufacturing facilities, or maybe government-controlled enterprises of Ukroboronprom, or maybe state-private partnership we're currently working on, because our goal is not to make something that doesn't have any similar equipment in the world, but our goal is to make a lot of them. Zaluzhny asked for us to have done it yesterday. Okay, Zaluzhny asked for us for yesterday, but we are ready. When are we gonna be ready? It's weeks or months. I'm sure that this heavy machine that I was talking about is something that was already announced with a 1,000 kilometers range. I think that the heavy machine will fly normally by the end of this year. We will have already test specimen that we would be able to show to the people. It already exists, but it's not about the secrecy of it. But I don't want to black eye it. So we just cross the fingers and our boys and girls keep working. The machine is already in the air and it landed. Well, it's a good thing that it landed, didn't fall. It's more than 200 kilograms payload, as I mentioned. It's the development which complies with the tasks set by Valery Zaluzhny. Back in, if I don't mistake myself, in August, we had a list of tasks to fulfill. So it's one of the tasks within all this full complex, and by the end of this year, I hope we will have it shown to the people, to the armed forces and the Ministry of Defense as our only, and for the time being, the only client. So they will have to pay advance to us, and for which cost we will continue doing our research and development further on with the engagement of our constructors, engineers, who are heroic people, in fact, judging by the events that were happening in spring. But for some reason they don't want to work without payment, without money for which they feed their families, and they donate to the armed forces of Ukraine. And if we need money to procure spare parts, at least for something, there should be a government order, government contract. We will show it to our client and they will tell us what needs to be added, what needs to be modified, and if this will be going to the series, report completed. I want to add, you mentioned that we have an advantage, our intellect, and one of these components is our people, our incredible people who work in the rear. We're talking about the repair brigades who take part of the repair of our critical infrastructure in any minutes, our utility enterprises and those involved in the defense industry. You mentioned that Ukroboronprom suffered losses, unfortunately. What losses did you mean, if we may ask? We have 5 dead. Now, for what I know, there are more, but I cannot give you the exact figures because I don't want to lie. Our enterprises received more than 120 strikes on us, which were not mentioned because we are defense industry, and you know it not worse than I do, that the armed forces of Ukraine don't publish their losses of our personnel. And this is the position taken by all the resistance forces, like patrol police, border guard, and so on. But I have to tell you, we did a great job in terms of our enemy did a great job in preparing the strikes on our military industry infrastructure, because the tanks started going out of service from the very first day of war, and we know for sure who will repair these T-80, T-64, and then T-90, and all our Eastern Land Lease material, everything that comes as trophies to the armed forces of Ukraine and other units of the resistance forces. That's why the question of telling about our repair, it's in fact in 2 planes. We cannot give the enemy any information of any kind of what we do and where we do it. I will give you an example. I think maybe in the end of spring there was a strikes on our Kyiv armor factory, and it happened because there were ready-made products there already. The enemy knew about that and they inflicted a strike. And so I reiterated, they did a big job on striking our enterprises, but they still fail. And another plane is the emotional plane. If today I say which enterprise repairs sections, people will not come to work tomorrow because they will expect Shahed or a missile to hit this enterprise tomorrow. The enemy will not strike upon my words, but upon completion of intelligence, reconnaissance steps, and only then they could commit a strike. Because our armed forces want everything, a lot of things already yesterday. And if I'm not mistaken myself, 5 months or, well, 4 months for sure, having a plan for repair of the damaged material. We were moving it all the time. You told us, well, we all know that the funding is not sufficient and is still necessary in all the parts, in all the areas, to keep research and developing these powerful weapons. And someone may ask, is it necessary to invest in this IRST who have the 100% efficiency? Should we orient more on ourselves or the Western material? Well, it's the issue of priority. The priority of the work of the Ukroboronprom is not defined by the reason, but by the government authorities. So there's a number of fields: rocket, counter-rocket, armor, and so on and so forth. And there are priorities. Any person who at least once tried to put together a radio transmitter, so they understand that in order to develop the anti-aircraft or counter-rocket system, so they understand how many time and money and brains are required to build this thing. These things, they cost very big money, and we acquire them in a very difficult way from our Western partners, because this is a very high-tech type of weapon. We would like it very much to manufacture our own IRIS-T. Maybe one day we will be able to do it. Now we're looking for the options on how to engage our Western partners and organize joint enterprise in any way which would produce at least one thing that we could contribute to our armed forces. But we have to understand that everybody likes, well, I like to joke that we have a World War II with UAVs, but when we say that one of the rockets which was intercepted above the Sea of Kyiv, it cost $5 million, it doesn't just cost $5 million for no reason, but because it's a high-tech thing which needs to be developed to be spent years on. So we were thinking about different options, like on the level of our dreams, to just to set up an enterprise, to bring people there, and to have them develop something. It may be a joke, but we consider any options for development. The development of any type of weapons like intercept, battleship, is very costly. We spent 130 billion only for resistance forces. I will remind you that the whole budget of the whole defense sector was 200 billion, and Ukrainian armed forces were getting 160 million per year before. Now they get 130 per month. We have to understand that if now, well, let me give you an example. I hear it very frequently that Ukroboronprom needs to do something. First of all, we don't exercise control over the government funds. And which one of the armor factories do we have to switch off to proceed to the research and development of something that would come to the armed forces within not 10 but 2 years? Ukroboronprom comprises about 60,000 people who were repairing and manufacturing military material, and this is exactly what gave our government authorities the opportunity to insist on providing, on requesting, for example, HIMARS or IRIS-T, because we cover our needs for the tanks. We had a tank in Kharkiv region which was coming for repair 5 times, and last week it came back for the 6th time, and people, I think that people come to touch it because they think it brings luck. Dear colleagues, your questions. Valentin Marchuk, Ukroboronprom. Recently, Ukroboronprom stated that they developed a law related to the development of military industry complex, and Verkhovna Rada is about to review it. And when do you expect it to be reviewed and adopted? Vadim, I cannot report you directly about this draft law. I cannot tell you about any terms of periods, but still I want to thank you for the question. I will refer it to our employees, and maybe we will have some formal statement on this. to promulgate in the media when we will have certain stages implemented and what we will have practically from this draft law. Another question I have, can you please tell us, you're saying that Russia inflicts strikes on our enterprises, on our manufacturing facilities. Do you consider an option of relocating them abroad to impede these strikes and to create like jobs abroad for Ukrainians? For the within the first time of my speech, I mentioned the word relocation, but where we relocate and what we relocated and what we are about to relocate, it's secret information. I hate to say trust me because no one has an obligation to trust me, but I'm trying to give you an example. Please hear me. Do you remember the Ghost of Kyiv, a team of pilots who were defending Kyiv within the first 3 months? I will remind you that the repair of the MiG-29 is only done by our enterprises. Still, all of our MiGs are in the air. They keep flying. I hope I answered your question to the fullest extent. Dear friends, any more questions? No more questions. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining our air and having this comprehensive conversation. We had Oleg Boldarev with us, or Martin Brest, however it is more convenient for you. And at 12:30 we will talk with Yuri Ignat about the situation in the skies. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.
Дуже дякую.